Story 1. This recently happened at a local hospital emergency room. A woman came into the emergency room with some medical issues. She had driven herself there. After being examined, she was placed on a bed in one of the emergency rooms. After several hours of observation and testing, the medical team determined that her condition was serious enough for her to be admitted to the hospital for further treatment. When the woman was informed of this, she said that before being admitted to a hospital room, she wanted to go home to shower and get some food. Her plan was to leave, freshen up, eat, and then return to be admitted. It was explained to her that this was not how the process worked. Once admitted, she would have access to meals and a shower in her hospital room once the doctor cleared her to do so. The woman didn't like that answer and continued insisting that she would leave to shower and eat, then come back. The staff repeated that this was not allowed. If she left, she would have to start the entire process again, checking in, waiting to be seen, and being examined all over. Despite the explanation, the woman became increasingly upset. Eventually, she decided to leave without notifying anyone or signing the necessary paperwork to acknowledge that she was leaving against the doctor's recommendation. The staff moved on with their work since patients are always free to refuse treatment. Her room was cleaned, reset, and used for other patients who needed care. About 3 to 4 hours later, the same woman returned to the emergency room. She had gone home, showered, changed clothes, gotten food, and eaten. Now, she was demanding to be placed back in the same room she had before and to be immediately transferred to a hospital room for treatment. Once again, staff explained that this was not how it worked. She would need to check in again, wait to be seen, undergo examination, and then be reassessed by the doctors to determine if she needed to be admitted. She became irritated, especially when told that the room she had previously been in was already occupied and that all the other rooms were full. She would have to wait like everyone else. Frustrated, the woman decided to call emergency services, asking for officers to come to the hospital and handle the situation so she could be admitted right away without repeating the process. A short while later, officers arrived to assess the situation. After listening to her lengthy complaints, they calmly explained that she could either follow the hospital's procedures or leave. The woman argued for a bit longer, but eventually gave up and left. Even if she had gone to another hospital in the area, she would have faced the same process. It's possible she later decided to call an ambulance, thinking that arriving that way would get her in faster. However, that's not how the system works either. Patients are still prioritized based on the severity of their condition, even if they arrive by ambulance. Considering that she had the energy to drive, shower, eat, and even call the police just to try and get her way, it seems her condition wasn't as urgent as she thought. But still, what an entitled attitude. Story 2. I was reading about some people how they quit their job on the spot and the company went under. This is when I was part of a mass walk-off. This happened in the late 90s when I worked for a concrete company. We were the ones pouring foundations, footings, floors, etc. It was long hours, but the pay was good. Most of the guys on the crews were awesome people with a great work ethic. We also had some that were slower, but not too slow to impede the job. Well, bossman was micromanaging, interfering, loud. I don't think I ever heard him when he wasn't yelling, and didn't think anything about grabbing a worker to yell in his face. 1 week before the walkout, we were working on a foundation for a kiln at a sawmill. There weren't enough people in all the crews to do the job, so he hired some locals to work until the job was finished and paid the same as us. We didn't care. More hands, more work done, and them getting paid the same as us, we considered they were lucky. No hard feelings and seemed to get along with all the new guys. One of the new guys was not shown how to do a certain task and thought, who better to show me than bossman? So he walked over and asked to be shown. That is when all hell broke loose. Not sure if the bossman was already in a bad mood or if this caused it, but within a second of asking, the bossman had the guy by the throat against a wall and slapped him so hard he fell over the safety fence and had a 4-foot fall to the concrete floor. Bossman just walked off the job site and drove away. This was a time when cell phones weren't very common, and none of us had one, but the two-way radio in the truck had an emergency channel. The foreman radioed for an ambulance and police. The foreman went in the ambulance with the worker and filled out his police report at the hospital. Lucky for the worker, he ended up with just bruising and nothing broken. Since the foreman was the second in charge, he had all of our home numbers and gave each of us a personal call to let us know the hospital report and to ask us to get together for a group chat. All of us showed up, except one, the guy who got hurt. We passed it off. He was too sore and thought no more about it. Not only because it was at a pub and the first round was free, but to find out what everyone's thoughts were. Other than the new guys, we were all happy enough to just walk away like the bossman did and let him suffer the consequences of breach of contract with the sawmill. They just wanted the money. This is when our except one limped in. He told us he just came from home after talking to the officer in charge of the case and said the bossman just got arrested for assault causing bodily harm. Or something of that sort. I can't remember right off. That settled it with the locals. They were all charging him with breach of contract since he hired them to complete this job, and now they can't. The next day we were all at the job site, and when the bossman showed up we each walked up to him and said directly in his face, "I quit," then went to our vehicles and drove away in parade fashion. He ended up with such big fines through his company for breach of contract at the sawmill that took up everything he had saved, and he had to sell off equipment to make ends meet. Then came the 6 or so temporary employees with their claims. The court sided with all of them, and he was made to pay out each contract in full. That broke him, and he had to let the bank take almost everything. I don't know why, but his wife stuck with him, even though she admits he got his just dessert. She comes from a family of money, so even if he is broke, she is not. Even more fallout. Remember that guy he threw over the fence? Yeah, he won his case too, and the bossman had to spend close to 5 months in county jail, a huge fine he couldn't pay, 1-year anger management courses, and volunteer at the local food bank. If there was more, I can't think of it right now. In the end, his in-laws loaned him the money to start up again, and for the last 10 years has been doing good for himself, and is actually a great man to work for. I like to think that his entire workforce walking out one by one had something to do with it. Story 3. So last month, I was in an accident where this guy misjudged his turn radius, leaving a parking lot and hit my back bumper. His car was completely screwed on the right side, his front right tire popped, and the entire right side of his car from completely scratched and streaked with my red car paint. I knew there was already some weird crap going on because when he pulled over, 2 Korean dudes came out of his car and literally just walked away. Keep in mind, this dude is a 50-year-old Middle Eastern man, but I was so shook up at the time I was just like, what the hell? Okay, we got out, exchanged information. He gave me his personal insurance, took pics, and said that we would be in contact about next steps. I filed a claim literally an hour later because, that's what you're supposed to do, not like what this guy tries to freaking pull. He contacted me that night and asked that we figure this out between ourselves, that he's a nice, reasonable guy, that he just graduated law school. I don't know how this was relevant in our conversation. Maybe he was trying to imply he'll get me. That he has no money, blah blah. I was like, oh, I already filed the claim, and immediately his tone changed and he got all upset. I knew that he was going to screw me over. His insurance company called me a few days later saying that their client hadn't filed a claim yet and only knew because my adjuster contacted his adjuster to inform them of the accident. So they asked for my side of the story, which I gave honestly. They told me that they are obligated to give their client 14 days to contact them back before making a judgment. This was already 4 days after the accident, and I was like, what the heck, this driver is sketchy as heck. A few days later, I got a call from their insurance. They determined that liability was 100% on me. This freaking driver lied about everything. He lied where the accident occurred, lied about coming out of a parking lot, and claimed that the damage occurred when I merged into his lane. He even freaking claimed that there were no passengers in the car. I was furious. How can he just try to pull this crap on me? The pictures obviously show the damage, and his story doesn't even make sense for the damage done. He probably thought that he lucked out because he was a 50-year-old man and I was a 20-something girl, that he would be able to use my inexperience against me. Well, screw that. Get wrecked, son. My insurance company tried to reason with his adjuster, but because there were no witnesses or dashcam, it became a he said, she said battle. But my adjuster wouldn't give up. She was like, screw it, he didn't have Uberlift stickers on his car, but let's just file a claim for both and see who contacts us back and try to poke holes in his story. And lo and behold, Uber contacted us back. They asked me about the accident, and I was like, ooh, so here's the deal. This dude didn't give me his Uber insurance. He gave me his personal insurance. So I'm just here asking if you can confirm he was working for Uber at the time, because he's straight up lying to his personal insurance. And the Uber adjuster was like, okay, this is a different situation because we thought this was a by-the-book accident, so now I have to go back to Uber and file an inquiry for more info. That was a week ago. On Monday, I got a call back from Uber confirming that he had passengers in the car at the time, and that he was driving for Uber during the accident. Oh heck yes. I call my adjuster, who then calls the driver's personal car insurance adjuster to let them know that this crap about to go down. My adjuster calls me back and basically says that his personal insurance is dropping their claim. Their only focus now is to get the money back that they gave for his repairs. My adjuster then tells me that the driver essentially committed insurance fraud by lying about everything, and that he could have been trying to double dip both Uber and his own personal insurance, and that now this dude has a whole set of other issues to deal with. She tells me that his personal insurance is going to be contacting Uber and getting more info before moving on. But I get the impression that this dude is screwed. Got a call from Uber literally yesterday after I sent in estimates for my repair, and they're going to hook me up next week with a rental car and pay for my repairs as soon as possible. I'm so thrilled and had the biggest justice boner ever, and it was freaking fantastic. I know I was lucky because if it wasn't for those 2 passengers, I likely would have been screwed. I only have liability insurance, and I'm definitely going to invest in dash cams, but hell, this was a journey for my first accident. I'm going to be living off this schadenfreude for the entire year. Story 4. So, this happened a little over a month ago, and honestly, the revenge that followed was completely justified. A bit of backstory first. Back in the fall, my parents adopted a new kitten. At 4 months old, our kitten, whom I'll call Kitten Don't Laugh, he deserves respect, was the cutest little thing imaginable. Then, he grew. It turns out he's a Maine Coon, which is one of the largest domestic cat breeds in the world. Currently, he's a year old and already the size of a small to medium dog, and he'll keep growing until he's around 3 years old. In other words, he's a big cat. But he's also incredibly sweet, fluffy, and adorable with his kitten face. He has a loving personality, tons of kitten energy, and we even trained him to go on walks using a leash. Yes, we walk Kitten like a dog, and he loves it. The neighborhood kids adore him, though due to the global health restrictions at the time, we couldn't let them pet him. Maybe in the future, that will change. Because Kitten is leash trained, we often let him run around the backyard on a lead, so he can enjoy himself without driving our other cat crazy. He loves it. But it was during one of those backyard sessions that the incident happened. I was in the kitchen, home alone, when I heard barking and screeching. I looked out the window just in time to see our neighbor's Doberman had gotten into our yard and was chasing Kitten around. I jumped into action, grabbing the frying pan I had been about to use, and rushed outside to scare the dog off. In those few seconds, the Doberman managed to bite Kitten's tail. Thankfully, the dog let go when my cat turned and swiped his nose, and I quickly put myself between them, shouting and waving the pan around. The dog finally backed off and walked back into the neighbor's yard through the gate it had pushed open because I hadn't latched it properly. That was a mistake I would never repeat. Then I saw something that made my stomach twist. Our neighbor had been watching the entire thing. I shouted, asking why she hadn't stopped her dog, and she just smirked and said something like, "It's not my problem you didn't lock the gate." I snapped back that she hadn't locked hers either, but she was already walking inside, leaving her dog out. Furious, I brought Kitten inside and checked his tail. Thankfully, his thick fur had protected him, but I was still shaken. If I hadn't noticed in time, he could have been seriously injured or worse. On top of that, there was the health concern since pets were believed to be possible carriers of the virus at that time. I had to clean the slobber off his tail and quarantine him in the kitchen, as my family has a history of asthma. I quickly made an emergency litter box out of a bin and gave him food and water. I even tied his leash so he couldn't wander out. Kitten was understandably upset to be confined. I called my mom to explain everything so she wouldn't be confused when she and my sister got home. Then, I called my dad, since Kitten is technically his cat. I told him what happened, and he was furious, but he's a truck driver and couldn't come home for a while. When my mom and sister got home, my mom tried to talk to the neighbor, but it didn't go anywhere. I stayed downstairs that night to keep Kitten company during quarantine, and to keep our other cat away from him, just in case. Before anyone says I'm strange for sleeping downstairs with a cat, hear me out. Cats have personalities, emotions, and incredible intelligence. They're in tune with people's moods. I've watched both our cats comfort my sister during hard times, and they always communicate what they want clearly. They'll sit by the back door when they want to go outside, sit at their food bowls when they're hungry, and even paw at doorknobs when they want into a closed room. Anyway, the next morning, we took Kitten to the veterinarian. Thankfully, the vet is one of my mom's clients. She's an accountant, so she agreed to see us early. Kitten had to stay for a few nights for testing, and I isolated myself just in case. He also had a rabies test, which came back negative. About a week later, the vet called with the results. Everything was fine. We picked Kitten up and brought him home, and he was so happy to be back. He snuggled with us endlessly and even gave us little lick kisses. But there was still the matter of the neighbor. I wanted some kind of justice, but I didn't know how to get it, at least not yet. We only let the cats out when the woman wasn't home or when one of us could supervise. The gate was always kept closed, though sometimes we'd wake up to find it open. Because we were renting, we couldn't install a lock on it. Then, 2 weeks after the incident, I stumbled upon the perfect opportunity. I was downtown riding my bike when it started to rain lightly. As I stopped under a tree to put on my rain jacket, I noticed something surprising: a payphone. Yes, an actual payphone. At first, I was just shocked, but then I realized I had an idea. I'm a huge fan of the show Animal Cops on Animal Planet, and I knew from watching it that letting a dog roam and attack another pet is a serious offense. While I don't live in the United States, and the laws might differ, I figured it was worth a try. I didn't want this traced back to me, especially since I had just gotten a new job to help pay for my tuition. The payphone was perfect for remaining anonymous. I parked my bike a bit away, hid my cell phone in one of the saddlebags so no GPS tracking, and pulled up my hood. Since it was raining and the downtown area was nearly empty due to the health restrictions, no one paid attention. I also wore a mask and disposable gloves, which worked perfectly for staying both safe and anonymous. I called the police from the payphone and explained that there was a woman down the street who regularly let her Doberman loose. I said the dog had entered a neighbor's yard and bitten a cat that was on a leash. I also mentioned that she often let her dogs bark all night and roam around without leashes, which is illegal on public property outside designated dog parks. I told the officer I'd prefer to remain anonymous, gave them her address, and hung up. Afterward, I disposed of the gloves and biked around for a bit before heading home. When I returned, I saw a police car parked in front of the neighbor's house and an animal control van pulling the Doberman out of my backyard. The woman was shouting at the officers. I approached, keeping a safe distance, and politely asked what was happening. An officer asked who I was, and after I showed my university ID, I explained that I lived in the house where the dog had been found. I recounted the entire incident. He asked if I wanted to press charges for reckless endangerment and animal cruelty since I was a legal adult. The neighbor was glaring daggers at me, and I couldn't help but smirk slightly as I replied, "With extreme pleasure." That's when everything escalated. The woman tried to assault me, ended up hitting a police officer instead, and was immediately arrested. The officer I had been talking to asked if I also wanted to press assault charges, and as I watched her get put into the patrol car, while animal control loaded the dog into their van, I happily agreed. My parents and sister were stunned when they came home later that day. They're both essential workers, so they had missed the entire scene. So, the following week, everything wrapped up in the best possible way. The woman faced severe fines, probation for several years, and the final blow 6 months in jail. Her dogs were taken away due to neglect, and after being properly trained, they were put up for adoption. I later checked the animal shelter's website and saw that both dogs found new homes. Honestly, that made me happy because it wasn't the dog's fault. They just had a careless owner. Because of the heavy fines and probation, the neighbor could no longer afford to stay in her rented home. She lost her belongings and had to move out completely. All of this happened because of that one anonymous tip. The best part was that it was entirely legal and effective. In the end, the neighborhood was much quieter, and no one else had to deal with her irresponsibility again. I still make sure the gate is securely latched every single day, but now I do it with peace of mind, knowing that Kitten is safe. Long story short, if anyone ever tries to harm my precious cat, I won't yell or argue. I'll take the proper steps, call the authorities, and make sure justice is served. That woman learned the hard way that neglecting her responsibilities had consequences, serious ones. Edit for clarification. For those doubting this story, here are a few important points. 1. Rabies tests where I live can take anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to confirm. During that period, the animal must be quarantined to ensure there are no symptoms. As I mentioned earlier, it took an entire week before we got the all clear, and I was worried sick. Kitten is my dad's cat, and honestly the main reason he doesn't get depressed while working long hours away from home. 2. I had seen a news report in Canada about a dog testing positive for the virus, so you can understand why I was extra cautious. My family has a history of asthma, and I wasn't going to risk anyone's health. Being careful isn't paranoia, it's being responsible. 3. I'm a writer by trade. I write stories for fun, and in university, I have to write reports, essays, and a variety of academic papers that require precision and structure. It's become second nature to edit and organize everything I write, from emails to stories, to make sure it's clear and accurate. And 4. No sane person enjoys writing about one of their beloved pets being attacked. I shared this as a warning. Some neighbors can be irresponsible, and you must always protect your pets. I didn't enjoy the experience. I was anxious and furious, constantly worrying that she might let her dogs loose again. Even now, I still check the gate latch every time I come home from work or shopping. It's a small habit that gives me peace of mind. In the end, justice truly did prevail. Kitten is safe, healthy, and spoiled as ever, and the neighborhood is finally calm again. Story 5. Of my 6 siblings, I'm 39 male, the only childless sibling. Subsequently, I'm the favorite uncle, I'd say de facto, but I actually enjoy spending time with my 11 nieces and nephews. While I'm childless, I will spoil them as my own with gifts and/or my time. I had aunts and uncles like this when I was young, and being from a close family, I enjoy the relationships. Most, key word here, of my siblings, including myself, just aren't very materialistic. We'd rather spend time together on holidays and birthdays than feel obligated to give gifts, so we stopped giving sibling gifts years ago, which really upset the youngest brother, 27 male, because he didn't feel it was fair we got more years giving gifts to each other since we're all older than him. Whatever. A couple years ago, our family had a baby boom right before Christmas. 4 of my siblings had a kid within 4 months of the holidays. I usually don't buy Christmas or birthday gifts for nieces and nephews until they're 2 years old, but with them all being newborns and their first Christmas, I wanted to get them all something small, so I got them all a different small plush animal. All of my siblings were appreciative, and at least one of the kids remains inseparable with their plush chicken. Okay, well, almost all of my siblings were appreciative. My youngest brother and his wife were noticeably annoyed. I didn't think much of it because I was just enjoying Christmas with the family and watching the kids open gifts. A couple minutes later, my brother turned to me and said, "If you want to be the favorite uncle, you have to do better at gifts than this." The range of emotions in that moment went from shock, anger, annoyance, and even a tinge of guilt. The guilt was very short-lived as I kind of initially laughed it off. But I was upset and offended more than anything. Before we left, I confronted him about his comment, and it didn't go well at all. He was immediately upset because he and his wife didn't feel like they got comparable gifts compared to the other kids, and they didn't see what their 3-month-old could possibly do with a small plush toy. I was at a loss for words. I was upset. I told him how I felt and left it at that. He and his wife are pretty tone-deaf, so I know none of what I said stuck with them. Everything was going to be a comparison, and there was always going to be an expectation of certain gifts. I just don't play that game. The following year, I stuck to my unwritten policy of no gifts for kids under 2. My other siblings didn't care at all. Of course, my brother and sister-in-law took umbrage the following Christmas as they again compared gifts. It wasn't that their kid didn't get anything. My parents budget out the same price for every kid, and it's usually clothes, books, and some toys. It's just they weren't getting what they wanted for their kid. Unfortunately, they were more vocal about it that year. It turned off the whole family to wanting to get any gifts for their kid. Fast forward to this past Christmas. I was very tempted to not get them anything, but I didn't want to punish their kid for the selfishness of her parents. She is a great kid, and being a 2-year-old toddler, she was fun to be around, very energetic, very fun, and somewhat wild. So I was going to get her something she would love, not something her parents wanted. It's kind of my gift with my nieces and nephews anyways. For example, I got my then 2-year-old nephew a cuckoo clock because he was obsessed with my parents' clock. He has that clock up in his bedroom and still idolizes that thing 5 years later. With all of this in mind, I decided to get the only thing I knew my brother's kid loved: Smarties. I didn't just get her a bag, but I bought her 3 5-pound bags of Smarties, dumped them all in a box, and wrapped it. When I handed my brother the box on Christmas, he specifically made the comment that I finally outdid myself. While that irked me a little, I was overjoyed to watch my niece's pure joy opening a box of 15 pounds of her favorite candy, while her parents reacted with a face of horror like I gifted their child a bag of flaming poop. My brother turned to me and said, "What are we going to do with all those Smarties?" like it was my problem. I just replied, "Nothing. But your kid is going to love them." I hope that resonates with them, because she's been rather obsessed with mini M&Ms as of late. Story 6. Okay, so this happened almost a year ago, when I was in 8th grade, 13-year-old male. Time to meet the cast. Me, spoiled brat. I'll call Sam, not actual name. Sam was a spoiled brat who had rich parents, meaning he got a big allowance at which he used to rub in people's faces, like he bragged and showed off in ways I didn't know were possible. Not that I'm saying I'm jealous, but it was annoying. Some examples would be, in school, he would look up 2 different expensive shoes, like the ones above $500, ask people in the class which one he should get. A person would state their opinion, usually the less expensive ones, and he would say, "Nah, I'm going to get the more expensive ones." Or just show off he got AirPods and an Apple Watch, by constantly putting them off and on in front of everybody to see. He was also a hypocrite, like if I was chewing gum, he would tell even though he had gum, too. "You're not supposed to have gum at my school." Me and him were a bit overweight, but I grew more fat in the chest area sadly, and even though I got teased from people sometimes, I didn't care, but he would go out of his way just to be mean to me, constantly steal my water bottle, lie, teases me, steals my jokes. Everybody know I made the jokes, so he didn't get any credit, cuts me in line for something like lunch, bumps into me hard on the shoulder purposefully, etc. He also greatly annoys other people for other reasons. so literally almost everyone in my school hates him. So he doesn't have that many friends, not trying to be mean though. So more background information. In civics, there is a lot of homework, so I usually help some friends with it. So Sam tries to annoy me to help with the homework. So I obviously say no, until I give up and say yes, but I never helped him as I would lie and say, I'm working on it still. All of this information is just to show how much I hate him. Now on to the story. So there is this 7-Eleven near the school on my way home. I walk, so I stop by it sometimes to get gum, etc. So Sam hears of this and asks if I could get him some $50 PS4 gift card. He said he would pay me the money to basically be like an Uber Eats, but for gift cards. I say no, he begs me again, and annoys me by being a hypocrite. So I say yes so he can stop, and he said he will pay me $2. I'm annoyed, but I say fine. He later then does more stuff to make me hate him more, homework stuff, etc. So later, he said that he will give me $350 so I can get him a $350 Visa gift card. He did research saying he don't need 18-year-old people to verify and activate the card, and I will get $10 if I do so. I reluctantly did it, but I accidentally got him a prepaid Visa gift card, which requires adult verification. Needs to be activated soon or it will expire and he loses his money, and once activated, it will mail a real card with his name, etc. I also opened it so he can't return it, and I gave it to him and the $10 I was supposed to keep. He was mad because in order to keep the money, he will have to tell his parents what he did. Karma well received, and I did it on accident because I was in a rush, still felt guilty, but I felt good and satisfied. I haven't really seen Sam since then, nor do I know what happened with him next with a card, but I know he hates me. I don't care though. Long time later, I saw him in P like 4 weeks ago at school, alone. He kept trying to go to me, calling my name and opening his backpack, like he was trying to give me something. I just ignored and walked away from him.